Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Atlanta Spotlight. That is my segment on my channel where I talk about all sorts of new entertainment people, be it filmmakers, writers, musicians within the Atlanta area, and give them the spotlight for close to around half an hour or so. So today I am going to be introducing another friend of mine. Last week I introduced my friend Ramon Rivera, and this week we have, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Corey Lightner.
So we've been working together for quite a while. He's an amazing director, and you guys are going to see and hear more about him today. So let's get to it. All right, you ready, Corey?
I am ready.
All right, cool. Well, then let's make this all about you. Tell us more about you. Who are you? What do you do? Just give us a basic introduction on yourself.
Yes, of course. So for me, I can't. It'll be rude for me not to tell you my full background with the inclusion of my military background. With that being said, my mom's in the military, and all of her siblings and family before her have served at some point in their life. And so with that, I've had the opportunity to move around the states and move around and adapt to new people, new environments constantly every 2 to 3 years of my life. That has been a privilege and a curse in itself. A privilege in being that when you get older, you look back and you see that people don't get a chance to, go outside of their boundaries. They're kind of scared to do so. But as a military kid, that's all you know is to go outside your boundaries. You're told, hey, look, adapt. You got to get with what's new. You got to have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. But as a kid, it's really, really uncomfortable. It's really like you make these friends you think you're going to be with forever. And then 2, 3 years pass by, you're like, okay, bye. You're like, but I just met you. I just got to really know who you really are. So it makes it better because when you go into a new space that you're not familiar with, you're not comfortable with, you're like, okay, how do these people work? You're kind of studying people over time, and you figure out what makes something that seems so different for everybody connect. Like what makes them laugh, what makes them tick, what makes their life so interesting, what makes them them.
That's really interesting because I feel like once a lot of people have graduated and now that they're out in the real world, like you were saying about how we have to get used to being uncomfortable or being put in uncomfortable situations, I feel like some people, myself included at some point, feels like they're kind of nervous to put their stuff out there because, you're not having your hand held anymore with school. Mm-hmm. You got to do things on your own. If you want to be a better director, you got to actually go out and direct. You want to be a better writer, you got to go out there and write. So with that being said, you mentioned a military background. Mm-hmm. So how did you get film involved in that matter? How did you learn to get more film experience?
Right. So for me, my introduction to all things entertainment was, as a small child, I was told I was going to be a comedian. And teachers would tell me, it's like, I'm looking out for you on TV. And I'm like 5 years old. I'm like, what is a comedian? Like, what are you talking about? So it's because I like to entertain people. I like to make them feel good. So I would always be the kid cracking jokes. I wouldn't necessarily be the class clown. I'd be like a closeted class clown. So I'd be sneaky with it. And as I got older, I honed in on what that really was. The value to entertain people, make them feel good. If someone was having a bad day, you cracked a joke. You made them forget about their bad day and forget about their troubles. And as I got older and older, I started to get into things like breakdancing, and I started to learn how to make more recordings and videos and things like that as I got into high school. And then with that, I started making dance videos in the kitchen. And from dance videos, I made skits with friends. And then from skits, I made miniseries of things like, I used to work at Wendy's when I was like 16 years old. So I'd make skits about the average day at Wendy's and make it really like silly and dramatic. Then I'll go into a mini series in college where I would talk about a series I made called Curved, about how you get rejected by people you find attractive. Made that a whole series. And then from there, I made music videos and things like that.
Oh, so it was like a gradually increasing the things you did, and they were all going hand in hand.
In a way, yeah. Slowly but surely, it was like I knew I always wanted to entertain people, but I didn't know how I wanted to do it. And so it's figuring out, okay, if I want to make people feel good, how do I make them laugh, but also make them learn something as well?
I looked on your website, and it says that some of your favorite films involve The Platform, I think it was Life, and Baby Driver. Now, yes. I saw Baby Driver. Mm-hmm. Love the movie. It's really good. But what about those films made you really start liking filmmaking? What about them inspired you?
Those particular films I've watched at different points in my life because they came out different times, of course. But a film like Life is one of my favorite films of all time because they take something so tragic and so dark, getting sentenced at that time in their life. I think it was like the 50s or so, 50s or 40s in the decade they start off in. And they go through time and show how these two friends kind of just grow up together. They get sentenced to prison, but it's two comedians. You have Eddie Murphy, you have Martin Lawrence. And it's just hilarious to see how they kind of make something so dark, so funny, and so lighthearted. And so the way they did that, I was like, I want to kind of do that, where you make something so gritty, over the top, funny, like you're crying in the movie, you're like, this is hilarious, but also some sentiment that's like, oh, friendship is in there. Something like that. Or in Baby Driver, the focus is on something you don't expect or subject matter you don't expect. And the way they do it is so beautifully done, because when I'm watching Baby Driver, I'm like, okay, it's about the getaway driver or the getaway person, right? It's about the heist. No, it's about the person actually driving the car. That's a whole new take on something like that. You never hear about that. And to dig into his life and do so with music so well was like, oh, this is fresh. This is something new. I never heard this story before, this perspective. And then last one, The Platform. The Platform for me just spoke on societal issues and classism and things like that. And they did it in a really visually beautiful way. It was really like in your face. Like, this is showing status, but showing you visually, hey, on different levels is different status. And so that's how it kind of plays out over time. It just goes into that kind of subject matter about how at the top class, the rich, the wealthy, you know, the suffering isn't present. But if you go to the bottom, you know, the poor, it's present. You're going to see it. You can't avoid it. And so the way they did it was really like pretty dark too, the way they did it.
Okay, so it's kind of, and forgive me if like I'm making the wrong like comparison, but it's kind of giving me a bit of Squid Game vibes.
A little, like, yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, like that one scene where I think it was like a couple people took like 2 eggs, and then some people didn't have anything to eat, and then of course,
yep,
they didn't make it. Since we're talking about film, and I mentioned that I went on your website, I have to know, Corey TV Presents. How did that start? Tell me more about that, because I really wanted to know.
So I told you that I danced early on, and when I was dancing, entertaining people, making jokes and whatnot, I wanted to make a persona that was bigger than me, something I can kind of tap into. This goes back to my military lifestyle. As I was moving, each location, you can kind of get a reset on who you were, or who you displayed who you were. Because, you know, when you're a new kid in school, no one knows you, so you have the ability to make their perception of you whatever you want it to be. Like when you go into school, think about being a new kid every 3 years. You can choose who you want to be. Like whether I want to be the shy kid or I want to be the really expressive kid or whatever I want to be. Now, of course, that wears off after a while because you fall into a routine of who you really are. So what I would do when I went to, one of the schools I went to was in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And I had a friend of mine who was really like, really funny, really like overly loud. I'm not the overly loud person. I'll crack a silent joke and people will laugh here and there. But he's like overly over the top. And he gave me the nickname or the moniker, Corey. He was like, that's Corey from VA. And I was like, oh, I like that. So I started doodling that everywhere and put it everywhere into everything I was doing. It became like a nickname for me. So with that, I carried that into the things that I made people laugh with. Whether I was going on stage when I went to college for the first time and did stand-up comedy, or where I went to dance, like my performance name. So I put that as like my part of my branding, my personal branding. But I'm changing that now. You said Corey TV Presents. I'm changing that to be something more, I guess, more adult, because I've had that since middle school. So I wanted to be something different now. And what I'm going with now is 98 and Great Productions, because the year I was born, 98. And of course, everything is great in 98. And, you know, everything I do, I want to be a nice big production.
That does make sense, because when you sent the recent like call sheet for the, what was it, Whiteface, I did notice it said 98 in Great Productions. And I'm like, wait, what happened to Corey TV Presents? So I was kind of, I'm like, wait, what happened? Is this a new person? I'm like, oh, that's cool.
It's a new person. Yeah, it's shifting. I'm trying something different. Like sometimes when you put your name everywhere, it's not too good. Like you should do it, but you have to do it tastefully. And I'm trying to do that in a way where it's like, you can tell some growth there, some change. I
did wonder like how you got that name actually, because I know you spelt it different. I'm like, so is it Corey or Corey? And then
everyone asks that.
Yeah, and then I heard
everyone has asked that. I did it also because it's like, if you see Corey with the, because my name is spelled Corey, if you see somebody spelled with Cory or Cori or any other way, you're just like, what makes them different? It's just another Corey. But if you say Corey, you're like, you know who that is. You're gonna know it automatically, okay, that's that person.
With all the projects that, not even the ones that we've worked together, but just in general, counting your old production studio and your old name and your new one, What would you say is I'd say the best set experience you've had, or maybe even the craziest?
We've had some interesting experiences. I was recording a lot of different college content when I was in college, my freshman year, and we would go out and make skits and whatnot. And so at that point in my life, I was open to hearing different ideas and getting different people involved. Because before then in high school, I was doing everything by myself. I was a one-man show, directing, producing, shooting, editing, starring. I would do all the stuff, running back and forth between the camera. And so at this point, I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. That's too much. It's ridiculous. So I have my friends star in different things and whatnot. I had the miniseries I made called Curve. I would have female friends of mine would give me their perspective on things, and it made it more authentic, more realistic, so people can relate to the scenarios I put together. And so one episode we have it where like I think someone was watching us scrolling Instagram for a girl, double tapped and DM'd her something inappropriate. The girl comes over to him and slaps him. We had to do that take like so many different times, and it was funny because it was like a fake slap, but at one point it got kind of real. And it was like, okay, like he's tired of getting slapped, but we have to make sure we have to get the right scene or the right take of it. So that was kind of crazy, kind of funny. We've done productions where we're shooting in front of people and it's like, what are they doing? Like, what are y'all doing? It's like, that's kind of crazy. Like outside in public where we are maybe in the public vicinity of like in front of the library, and we were shooting something, we're just shooting like art. And someone came up to us who was like in a suit and was like, you can't shoot here. We're like, why not? We're students. And they're like, yeah, but you can't shoot, you have to have a permit. We're like, so how do you do this if you're just a student and you want to just make art for your assignment or whatever? And they're like, we don't know, but you can't do it here. And they gave us a really hard time. So things like that, you kind of learn to get around with more experience, more things you do. Or you be creative and you make another scene.
What would you say is your favorite project you've worked on so far?
Well, it's always the recent project. I mean, sometimes it is. I shouldn't say that, because some projects I made and I knew it was going to be bad and I was like, we have to finish it. So for a long time, it was that miniseries I did make in school. And then my first music video I made on my cell phone, and we did that in the college dorm we're in. And I was like, this is pretty good for something I just took with my cell phone. It's pretty good. I would say right now, even though it's in post-production, it's the most recent production, Whiteface, because this is the first time I actually wrote a script. And in doing that, when I let you all read it, you all understood it. You had questions, but it was like questions to build the story. It wasn't questions because you didn't understand something. It was like, okay, so when you say this, what does this really mean? Like, what is it? How am I supposed to feel about this? Rather than being like, I don't get why you're doing this. And so in doing that, it was really welcoming to be a writer on that, because it's like, a lot of the times I used to jot down my ideas and just shoot it. But that's not helpful to you if you're trying to visually see it, because it's all in my head and you can't understand what's in my head unless I tell you or show you. So this most recent production, I have to say, is one of my favorites right now.
Yeah, I remember when I sat down and read the script, I really liked it, and I'm happy that you made it. And honestly, I had so much fun working on it with you. So
thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, here's another one. This is more of I guess you could say it's kind of a technical one a bit, but as a director you would still say that you're still kind of learning new things, and that's always open. That's always a good thing. But what would you say are some of the challenges you've managed to come across in your journey?
For me, as a director, your job is to visually express your idea and share with other people so they can understand as well. So early on when I'm doing stuff, I didn't have a shot list, didn't know what that was. I didn't have mood boards. I didn't have anything that visually represented my idea other than me speaking to you and telling you what it is. And so I had one friend of mine who, we can talk for hours about anything, and he would just understand when I'm explaining something to him, he gets it. And we always look up when we're explaining stuff, and we're like, yeah, we can see it right there. And we would get it back and forth, but other people outside of that would be like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm kind of getting it, but I'm not really getting it. And so that was really challenging at first, because it's like, well, he gets it, so can he just explain it to you? Because he's a really intricate person. He's really intricate in how he explains the joke and how he tells the story. So I oftentimes get him to explain things to people, or that was really hard in the beginning. One really, really hard thing for me when I was the one-man band was like having to let go. Like now I don't shoot anything anymore. I don't edit anything anymore unless it's a photo, because I know people who can do it better than me, such as Mario or other friends. I have people who will go out and do things better than me now. I just hire them to do it rather than stressing over it myself, because I know if I do it, I have a billion other ideas I want to do at that moment. So it's kind of hard for me to focus on that one thing. But also I know it's like, I'm not that great at this. I can get it done, but it's not going to be as good as I want it to be. And so that's a hard thing. People who are really creative is like, okay, if I can do 5 things decently versus one thing really, really well, just really practice on that one thing really, really, really well. You can still practice these other 5 things, but don't let them be your main thing, you know? You have to let go and be able to really make this rise to the top, that one thing.
So would you say your friend is like, you're more of a big picture person, and even though you can see eye to eye, your friend is more like detail oriented, would you say?
That's hard to say, because then a lot of people say I have a type A personality. A lot of people would say I'm a workaholic. A lot of people would say I'm very proactive and very detailed and very planned, very methodical and very logical, which I am all those things. But when it comes to creation, when I'm making something, it is a little bit more larger scale. But then I go into detail and go, okay, we're making this, but what's the end goal? Who's going to see this? What's the market? What's the target audience? How much money do we have? Like I kind of go into the details about producer type thing where I'm like, okay, we're making this, but what does it really mean? Like what's the whole purpose of this? So I would argue and say I'm both, but more leaning towards the detailed side of things.
Since we're talking more about the hurdles you've come across as a director, what do you find to be some of like the pros and the cons?
The pros and the cons. The pros are I always have ideas. I always have something I am thinking about or creating in my head, and I'm never like short of ideas. Like when people come to me, I'm always like, okay, I can make this a different way. Like I always have a different perspective I want to add to it. The cons with that is like I have so many ideas that it's often changing. And so even when we're on set for Whiteface or anything else I'm doing, I'm like, well, we can change this. We can make this different. Sometimes I have to silence that and go, okay, this is the actual idea. This is how much time we have. This is what we can realistically do. So I have to kind of make that real rather than going, okay, I want to do this, this, and this. No. What can you really do in this time frame, in this time span with this money? What can we really get done? And so that's a hard thing to kind of do, is like to make everything quiet and just focus on the one vision you have.
Kind of goes back to the whole letting go thing, would you say?
A little bit. A lot of times you see things and you're like, okay, it could be like this. For me, ever since I was a kid, it's like I visualize something one way, and then in my head it's all beautiful and it's like this, and this. And when you do it, you're like, that's not how it was in my head. I'm not satisfied. It's like, this is okay. It's close to it, but it's not quite it. So now one thing I do differently instead of just envisioning stuff is when I have other people involved and I get their vision added to it, it becomes bigger than what I had in my head. It becomes even better than what I had in my head, because it's not what I actually made, it's what we made together, and it's better.
I'm happy to be a part of that set, because we can help collaborate and make something. All right, now, we already talked about the crazy set experience, but adding to the craziness, I gotta ask this question. I call it the COVID question. How would you say the pandemic affected you as an independent artist? Because has it made it easier or harder? Because I know it's kind of different for everybody else, but for one person, it could be one thing. For another person, it could be another. So how has the pandemic, would you say, affected you?
It's hard to say whether it's easier or harder, only because we don't know what that life would have been like without it. For me, at the time when pandemic happened, I was in my senior year in college. I had like a few more months left. And what I was doing was I was doing an internship program for my major, which was advertising, not a film major. And I was doing that. I was moving from Virginia to Atlanta. I told myself, I made a goal to myself in 2018, by 2020, when I finished up school, I want to move to Atlanta because I want to do more film stuff. I'll be an adult. I can start doing stuff I want to do, for my career. So I was moving, I was doing an internship, finishing up online school, and I think I had a job or something else was going on. I was juggling all these things at once. Once I finally got to Atlanta in August of 2020, I finished school remotely. I finished my internship remotely, and things started to like slow down. And as things started to slow down, it was like, okay, what do I really want to do? So I started to get into different film productions, and I started to actually get on different sets. Everywhere else the world kind of closed down, but in Atlanta it was like, we're not really closed. We're closed, but not really closed. So I got to
Right.
jump on different sets as a BTS photographer and as a PA, and then bring those different ideas from when I was taking notes to my own sets and actually make them real and make them, you know, in my head and make them a real thing.
So you would say that you managed to kind of like make a good opportunity out of it, right?
Yeah, I would say it hurt, but I made the best out of it. I made what I could out of it.
Tell me a little bit about Whiteface. That's the recent film we worked on.
Mm-hmm.
What inspired you to mainly write about it? Was it from like a personal experience or?
There are some personal experience and some lines in there that resonate from my life and people that I know. It also comes from a lot of movies that I watch, but the heart of it comes from you've met Sam. It was me, Sam, and another friend of mine, Gerard. Gerard is a 30-year-old black man. Sam is a Korean and is like mid-20s, and so we're all out for brunch and we're eating, and me and Gerard are talking about we're talking about locks. At the time, I had longer hair, and we're talking about locks and gel and things like that. And Sam's like, "What are you guys talking about?" And we're like, locks. And he's like, "Huh? I don't understand." And so it becomes like almost like a second nature or a second language to him because he doesn't understand what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, well, that's funny because if you talk to your brother, about like if him and his brother are having a conversation about their hair, they're talking about a different kind of gel. They're talking about, setting or something. What else? It's just a different kind of way they do their hair. And then we're talking about culture back and forth. We're talking about, he tells us about his culture. He's like, when we put on articles of clothing, it's because it means something to us. Each article of clothing means something to us. It has a meaning behind it. And we're like, okay, when we put on clothing, it's more to show off how much money we have. It's to show off status. It's to show off wealth, to show off luxury. And so we're talking about different things like that. I made the comparison where it's like, okay, imagine the R&B group from the early 2000s, B2K versus BTS.
Right.
And I was like, that to me is like funny when you have cultures. It's like, it's very, very similar, but also different. And so I said, we should make a mini series where we're talking about different cultures coming together, doing different things. And so we was like, okay, let's do that. So we started the mini series. We started writing different ideas. One idea I had was an episode called Whiteface.
Oh.
And I wanted this one to be about black and white people. And I wanted it to be about going into different kinds of cultures, different kind of spaces where you don't feel welcomed. Because I wanted to visually show how uncomfortable it is to feel when you're not welcome. And I wrote down where the camera was supposed to be for a whole sheet of paper, and I wrote down how I wanted people to feel. I had pretty much like the middle of the film done and all the camera movements when I showed them the idea. And I was like, this is good, let's do this. We never did it. I saved the idea. They was like, save it because there's going to be another episode, be a later episode. And after a while, I was like, this could be a film rather than an episode. This could be a whole film, a whole short film. So I finished writing it out. I had a friend of mine help me formulate it and make it more structured. And we got what it is today, Whiteface.
Are you planning on submitting the film anywhere and when?
Yes, I'm trying to get to go to Sundance. Sundance because a few of my friends have been to Sundance. A few of my film friends have been to Sundance. I'm like, well, if I'm going to go in on the short film, I'm going to go all the way in. I want to fail as hard as I can. So I'm going to submit this and do as much as I can to get it as high as I can, because you don't know until you actually try. So yeah, I'm trying to get to go to Sundance for next year, next January.
Well, I'm rooting for you. We're all rooting for you, okay?
I appreciate it, I really do.
No problem. Do you have any words of wisdom for anyone who wants to get into film?
So I would say you have to experiment first. So you have to do everything you haven't done yet. And also a really, really big one is I was quote unquote directing stuff for a long time. I was doing it since I was 16 years old, making stuff, editing, whatnot, and making ideas from my head visually and things like that. So I was directing whatnot for 7+ years. I'm 24 now. So in doing that, it was like, okay, I think I know what I'm doing. But then I was doing it all for myself. I wasn't doing it for anybody else. You can really call yourself a director when you direct something for somebody else, because that's their vision and they trust you with it. So as of last year in 2021, January, February time, someone asked me to direct something for them. And I was scared because I was like, I've never done this for anybody else. I don't know how this works. I've done it for myself. I know how I want things to look, but I don't know how you want it to look. So someone else wrote the script, someone else produced it, and they asked me to direct it. And I get on that set, and it was the worst set experience I've ever had. Well, one of the worst. And by the time I was done with that set, I was like, I don't want to direct ever again. And I wanted to quit. And I say that because you think something in your head is going to work out the way it's supposed to, but then you go out and try it, and you may fail at it, and that's okay. Because after that, as you know, I went to direct 4 other projects. In a total, I think I directed 6. I directed and produced 6 projects that year. But it's because I didn't give up. And Sam also asked me, can I direct his music video afterwards or beforehand? I made a promise to him. So I did that. We went on to do more projects and had momentum. So I just kept going. I didn't ever stop, even though I wanted to in the beginning.
I like that you didn't give up. I'm glad you didn't give up.
I was this close. I was like, I guess directing's not for me. We'll do something else. This isn't going to be what I do.
So what are your goals for the rest of 2022?
So right now, one of my goals that I'm manifesting right now is actually happening at this moment in time as I'm moving to LA. I got a job offer, so I accepted it, and I'll be moving there in July and starting my career in advertising, but also I'll be doing things on the side with film and making stuff as always. My name is Corey Lightner. Social media is Corey Michael, and so that is CoreyMichael. You can find my work on CoreyLightner.com. That is CoreyLightner.com. Taylor's talking. Are you listening? I like that.
Thank you.